Hello and welcome back. In this short lecture, we're going to learn about device configuration profiles for the platform Android device administration. Let's begin how to create this. Log into the Microsoft Intune portal and go back to device configuration and navigate to profiles and click on create profile. And it will ask you to enter a meaningful name and the description and choose the platform as device administration, which is Android. And you have the options for the profile types. You can choose here the profile type as the device restrictions and entered my name of this policy as well as a description, and click on the settings. This what gives me the options for different settings which are device restriction specific to Android device. And the first policy would be the camera. If you want to block the camera, you can block this camera so that the end users cannot use the camera option. And copy paste, if you want to apply for Samsung Note only specific to copy paste, you can block it so that you are securing your device specific copy paste options. Similarly, clipboard sharing between different apps, this specific setting again for almost all these specific settings are for Samsung Note. Now you can block the specific setting. Diagnostic data submission, you can block this specific setting so that the applications doesn't share the diagnostic information or telemetry information. And factory reset option, if you want to block, you can block that specific setting on Samsung Note devices. And geolocation, if you block the geolocation, it's going to be block the location services from the device. Similarly, the power off configuration, if you block the power off configuration, it's going to prevent the users from powering off the device. Similarly, you also have another option for the screen capture. The screen capture is it's going to be, if you block here as the configuration, it's going to be prevent taking the screenshots from the device. And voice assistants like Google or Alexa, such things can be blocked by configuring block option. And if you configure as not configured, it's going to be allow the use of S-Voice services and the app on the device. And these settings doesn't apply for Bixby or voice assistants for accessibility that reads the screen content aloud. When you configure YouTube to be blocked, it's going to be prevent users to be using the YouTube application. When you configure shared device, when you set to allow, the end users can sign in and sign out of the devices with their Azure AD credentials, whether the device is used or not used. When you use this SEEP certificate profile, this feature actually allows the end users to share the device with the same applications for all those users. But for every user, it's going to actually use their own user certificate. So since it's going to be used the certificate, once they sign out, it's going to clear out everything. That way it can be used, and if you have not configured, it's going to prevent end users from signing into the company portal on the device with their Azure AD. So that's how it's going to use. And coming back to the block date and time changes, if you don't want users to changing the time and date settings, you can configure as block. These are the settings that can be configured in general. And coming back to the passwords, when you configure the passwords as required, the end user is going to enter the password to access the device. And this password complexity we can configure here with those options except the encryption level. And those password configurations would be like minimum password length, whether you want to configure the password minimum is 8 characters or 5 or whatever the characters or alphanumerical characters in this case, or the way you wanted to configure, you can configure that specific settings. Like I want at least the minimum password length as 8 characters or the maximum minutes of the inactivity until the screen logs. So if I configure as 1 minute, after the 1 minute of inactivity of the period, it's going to automatically lock the screen, and this way it's going to protect the device and users have to enter their password. A number of sign-in failures before it's going to wipe up. Let's say you have a device, and that device, if a user or unauthorized person entered more than 5 times, it's going to wipe up the device. So that kind of configurations can be configured here. And the expiry of the passwords, this can be configured like 30 days or 45 days, so that every 30 or 45 days, whatever the number you're going to enter here as the input, after that the users must have to change their password. And the password is required as a alphanumerical, or maybe here just the uh, with the symbols, or with just the complex numbers, or something like that. You can configure here. The best configuration always would be the all use at least the alphanumerical with the symbols. That way it's gonna more secure. And also the next configuration is the history of the password. Prevent reuse of the previous password. Say, let's say last 5 passwords can't be repeated. That kind of configuration here configure. And if you want to block the fingerprint to unlock the device, you can configure. If you configure smart lock and other trusted agent settings to block, in that situation it's going to prevent smart lock or other trusted agents from adjusting the lock screen settings. At least the configuration should be at least a 5.0 plus of the Samsung specific device settings. And this phone feature, or sometimes known as also a trusted agent, we also sometimes call it a trusted agent, and this will actually disable or bypass the device lock screen password if the device is in a trusted location. If you take an example of this setting, like this feature can be used when the device is connected to a specific Bluetooth device, or when it is actually close to or the NFC tag or such kind of configurations. Then it can be used for the smart lock feature. And if you want to prevent all this, you can configure as a block. And coming back to the encryption setting, this is the encryption setting. If you configure this as encryption as a required, it's gonna set that all the files on that specific device is going to be encrypted. Not all the devices are going to support this encryption, but you can use this encryption method. And this also required setting up your passwords, and the password type at least one of the numerical number with a minimum length of four as the characters or alphanumerical, so that it can be set that complaint settings. And that's how it's going to work. Coming back to the Google Play Store, when you configure here as a block, it's going to prevent users to using Google Play Store. And when you configure not configured, and it's going to allow the users to use the Google Play Store. That's how this specific setting works. The next setting would be the restricted apps. In the restricted apps, there are two configurations you can do. One would be per prohibiting apps. That means you're not allowing the users to use any applications other than what you configured. Other one would be the approved apps. So this is nothing but a list of apps that the users allow to install, so that they can be a compliant and users must not install any other applications. To configure this, you can go back here and click on prohibited apps as a first step. Then what would happen is you need to give a list of applications. Let's take an example here. If I give some of the applications, so whenever the user installs on that device, automatically you will be notified that, hey, this user installed that prohibited app. That way you would be notified. Let's take a example and how to configure this. So these are the inputs, like you need to give the application URL as well as the application bundle ID and app name and publisher. These four fields doesn't change whether you choose as the prohibited or the approved applications. Or you can also create a CSV format file, and then you can import also if you have the list of applications. Let's configure here the prohibited applications. The URL, how do you get the URL? Normally this is what the settings which we are trying to do on an Android device. That means we need to go to the Play Store of Android and search for the applications, any of the applications. For example, Microsoft Remote Desktop is one application example. What I would do is I would copy the complete URL like this and go back to here and give here the full URL path, and here the app ID. App ID is nothing but anything from the App Store. For example, if you for example shop, you're trying to install some of the apps. For example, let's take as a WhatsApp Messenger. What happens is if you take any of the your application, we need to take this entire URL and give us the URL here. And coming back to the Apple bundle ID is nothing but equivalent ID, whatever it is. Mostly it would be .com. dot com dot whatever the application. For example, if I choose Instagram as application, it would be .com dot Instagram. So this I need to give here so that the so that this would take as the application, for example here, and I need to not to give here the other .com. Sorry, here the equivalent button is not needed to give, and simply give that name so that exactly this one I'm gonna give here from here to here, and that would actually configures the .com. For example, if you see here .com Instagram.android, so the URL is the full URL is this. So I'm gonna choose this full URL. In fact, I can choose till here, till Android, because if I try to open in other web tab, it actually opens. That's all about the language. Other than that, there's nothing. So I can simply copy this URL and give that specific URL here. In case in our case we have already given, that's why I just taken out and including the Instagram name. Now the application name, what is the application name? Application name is nothing but here the display name is nothing but Instagram. You don't want to hello, or you want to report it if this has been anybody installed, you're going to notify it as a prohibited apps. Coming back to the publisher, I did enter here wrong, so let me go back to the publisher name, and the publisher would be Instagram. So that's a company. If you can see here, developer ID equivalent Instagram. So I need to give the same name Instagram here, and I need to enter here and click add. That would add, and if any of the user install the specific application, you would be notified. That's what the prohibited applications works. Whereas the allowed is the approved application. This is very similar configuration, but after configuring the approved apps, the devices are gonna become as the compliant. So having the compliant of the devices would definitely helps for the users to use that applications. So this is how you're gonna configure the prohibited or approved applications list. Thank you. And let's move to the browser specific configuration. If I choose here web browser as a block, by default is not configured, but if I choose as a block, what happens is it's going to prevent the default web browser from being used on the devices, and this specific setting is applied for Samsung Note only. And coming back to the autofill, so if you want to just block the autofill in the browser, you can do that, or you want to allow the cookies, or you want to block it, you can do it. All this kind of configuration, you can do it. And now coming back to the JavaScript, if you want to block the JavaScripts, you can do it. Similarly, if you want to block pop-ups on that web browser, you can do by configuring as block. So these are the specific settings can be configured in the browser specific. And let's go back to the allow or block apps. So allow or block apps, these are the settings to allow or block or hidden specific applications on your Samsung specific devices with their standard. And you have here the options like you want to allow apps to be installed or blocked from the launching, or hide a specific app from users. So such configurations you can configure here. So let's take this allowed apps installed, and I need to choose here the application package name and other information, or I can store that specific application name, or I can also get it from the App Store app if the app is available here. And that's how it's going to block. For example, I don't want maybe PowerPoint example, so or the specific kind of application I'm going to allowing the PowerPoint being installed on that specific device. Similarly, if I want to block example another application, maybe I can choose here as the store of that specific app, and maybe I want to block Acrobat Reader, for example, or maybe I don't want Edge to be installed, or maybe I want to allow PowerPoint but I want to block Excel example. These are just the examples to give you so that you can understand, and you can give this option so that it's going to allowing for one application, other application here in this configuration it's going to block it. And there are a few of the applications also can be hidden or hide from the users so that they don't see what's happening on that specific application. For example, you want to hide Microsoft Flow example, you can hide that specific application. And these are the application configurations for allow or block. And coming back to the cloud and storage, these are the settings which are which are, because if you take the Apple iOS configuration, if you can remember, we did try it for the blocking with the iCloud, whatever the device specific settings are going to store, that we blocked it. Similarly, since it's Android as the operating system, it will definitely contact the Google Drive or Google configurations. So if you want to block such configurations, you can do it. For example, Google Backup you want to block, or Google account auto sync should be blocked, so that the auto sync is nothing but the applications, whatever you have, such information can be automatically synced, including your account specific settings like contacts, all that information. And removal storage you want to block, you can block it, so that there will not be any of the external storage information block. You can block encryption on that storage also can be. Let's move to the another setting by clicking OK here, and if I go back to the cellular and connectivity, this is nothing but your data roaming or SMS charges or voice dialing, voice roaming, Bluetooth or NFC, Wi-Fi settings. All that specific configurations can be configured under cellular and connectivity category. So if you look at here, the data roaming is nothing but, if you choose as a block, it's going to prevent data roaming over these cellular networks, and if you don't configure, it's going to be allowed for the users, so users have full control, even though in the data can be used maybe roaming features also if you start not configuring. And if you start configuring for SMS or MMS messaging to block, if you choose that, the users are fully prevented to text or to the devices from the device automatically. The text messaging will be disabled. And voice dialing, if you choose as a block here, what happens is it's going to prevent users from using the voice dialing feature on the device. So it's like you have a phone but you can't dial. And coming back to the voice roaming, very similar setting, but if the user device is a roaming situation, then this is not allowed. The voice calls are completely blocked, because it could be international calling and it might lead to the huge bill, so they don't want allow that kind of configuration. Coming back to the Bluetooth, if you want to configure a Bluetooth to block, so that the users going to be prevented by using the Bluetooth on that specific device. So if you configure that's what the configuration would happen, like users can't use a Bluetooth. Similarly, NFC setting, if you choose as a block, it's gonna stop the near field communication technology, and if you choose as a not configure, it's not gonna configure anything. Users are allowed near field communication mechanism, stands for NFC here. NFC stands for near field communication, that can be configure block. Similarly, Wi-Fi profiles. Wi-Fi also, if you want to block using the Wi-Fi on the device, you can configure as a block. Similarly, Wi-Fi threatening is nothing but another way as a hotspot, sometimes we refer. So if you want to block, the users are not allowed to threatening Wi-Fi or hotspot enable on those devices, you can do this kind of configuration. And coming back to the kiosk settings apply to only this specific Samsung devices, and these specific devices are kiosk mode. Like kiosk modes, only the applications you run you normally use for the kiosk specific. What happens is, if you add any of the application name and the URL or directly from the App Store, it's going to be run in that kiosk mode, so users will be testing that kiosk mode. And similar options here, you can configure the application name based or URL or App Store, so that specific application only will be kiosk mode and other applications are completely removed. For example, I can choose here OneDrive as a kiosk, or maybe Google Groups or Skype for Business example. That would be a good example, including the remote desktop applications. So these are going to run as the kiosk on that specific devices. That should actually conclude this. Before that, one more word on the kiosk. What happens is, if whatever the applications you are configured, that's only will be available on your device. There will not be any other applications, so that users will be using that specific two applications, not more than that. That's the setting. So let's click on OK and go back to the OK, click again. And we did configure the device restrictions with the 13 different categories what we have configured. Now if you want to configure one more policies, you need to go back to the email configuration, trusted, all that we would be discussing in the next lecture, because this is already a lengthiest lecture, I wanted to include in other configuration. But in the real world, what you will be doing is you will be creating multiple AD groups, and you would be assigning that specific settings. You can't do general password all into one group or one policy. Sometimes we can't do that because some of these settings only require for few of the AD groups, not for all these settings may not be applicable for everyone. So if it is applicable for everyone, then you need to configure the specific settings globally. Otherwise, you need to use your Active Directory, which is as your AD, in this case AD groups, to be created, and then you need to work on that. That's how it's going to work. Thank you. And let's create. This is going to be created. Post to that, we need to assign by going back to that specific policy, in this case this, and going back to the assignments, you can actually assign to the group which you want to apply. For example, I want to assign for all users or devices. You have all the options. Otherwise, you can choose here only a specific group, which is a selected group. In this case, if I want to assign for only all finance users group, I can do that by selecting here and click on save. That would save my the specific settings going to apply for that specific group, which is nothing but in this case all finance users group. And if you want to evaluate, so it's going to pull the policies and it's going to apply that specific setting so that the configuration will be evaluated on those end targets. And thank you for watching this. Catch you in the next lecture.